There are plenty of life events known to change the way we think about things. Having a child, coping with a serious illness, retiring from work, or grieving a loved one. There is one other biggie that probably will never happen to us, but which might have the most significant impact of all on how we live, and that is becoming enormously rich. From KERA in Dallas, this is Think. I'm Chris Boyd. The ultra wealthy don't just live in nicer places and have more luxurious things than the rest of us. They truly live differently. My guest wanted to understand whether having hundreds of millions or billions of dollars at one's disposal might shape the way people think and act in predictable ways. So he started cold calling them, or maybe calling their people. And the small fraction willing to entertain his questions gave him some fascinating insights. Lane Brown is a features writer at New York Magazine, where you can find his article, What Does Extreme Wealth Do to the Brain? Lane, welcome to Think.
Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, when you ask a question like, what does extreme wealth do to the brain? I think many people would raise their hands and volunteer to be part of that clinical study. What got you thinking about whether being very wealthy might shape people's personalities?
Well, I think that, the ultra wealthy people sort of really, whether we want this to be true or not, sort of rule our lives in a lot of ways at the moment. They rule our politics, they rule our culture, they rule our tech. They are sort of almost all of the characters on TV are ultra wealthy right now. And I think that we sort of have maybe sort of a low resolution understanding of what is sort of actually happening inside their heads. And so I decided I wanted to, maybe try to put myself a little bit into their brain space and see what having lots and lots of money actually does to the way a person thinks, in hopes of, I don't know, maybe sort of pushing toward a greater understanding. And so that was sort of the genesis of this.
So some people may hear this and think, oh, poor wealthy people, they're misunderstood. But they are misunderstood in some ways. And to be clear, right off the top, nobody that was willing to talk to you struck you as particularly crazy or particularly evil. They seemed like people trying to do the right thing.
Right. All of the crazy, evil people turned my interview request down. So that's that's kind of what happened. So I say in the piece, I do sort of acknowledge that I was working with a limited sample. And so the people that were actually willing to talk to me, I think are, it's a self-selecting group of people who understood the value in this exercise. And yeah, none of them struck me as crazy or evil or, dumb or like any of the, characters on a show like Succession or Arrested Development or like that. And so this was sort of a special group of people.
Some of these folks seem pretty invested in not letting the money turn them into a version of themselves they don't recognize. Talk about the CEO that you opened the piece with, who has, I think, tens of millions of dollars.
Tens of millions of dollars. And he told me that he doesn't think wealth changed him at all. He thinks that he still thinks the exact same way that he did back before he had any of the money. He says he wears $100 shoes. He when he goes to a store and flips over the price tag on a sweater and it's like over $1,000, he just basically winces. He says he only owns two houses, which it's still two more houses than I own, but in his income bracket, I suppose that's not very many houses. And so he feels he's not just invested in sort of preventing himself from being changed by wealth, but he claims that he hasn't been changed at all by wealth, which I thought was funny, and I'm not sure I totally believed it. And as my conversation with him went on, it almost seemed like he almost was having trouble believing the words out of his own mouth. And so I do kind of wonder, after I hung up, what conversations he would have had with himself after after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to wince at the price of $1,000 sweater, but it doesn't sound like he then puts that sweater down and walks over to Old Navy and buys something similar.
Right. Yeah, you can get a Hanes, sweatshirt for $8 on Amazon, which is what I'm wearing at the moment. And so it's I think you can be as changed or unchanged by wealth as you want to be, I guess, but I think he's still probably living pretty well, I think, relative to most people. And he would acknowledge that.
Was it more challenging than usual for you to find people to talk to on the record for this story?
It was almost impossible. I sent hundreds of emails to pretty much every rich person that you could think of, wealthy person, right on down the Forbes list, as many CEOs as there are. And it's funny. I was telling someone else I used to wrangle celebrities for New York Magazine. I was the culture editor for about 7 years, and it was easier to get Taylor Swift and Leonardo DiCaprio and David Letterman for our cover than it was to just wrangle. Like my hit rate on getting people to talk to me was very low with this one, and so I ended up talking to about a dozen people for this, but that represents a very tiny percentage of the people I actually reached out to, and so I understand a little bit why they are afraid of having this conversation and why they might not want to talk to a journalist because of the way that the wealthy are sort of thought about and kind of discussed in the world, but yeah, it made me even more appreciative of the people that actually did say yes. I would say it was very hard to get them to say yes.
I think Mark Cuban may have been the only one who was happy to go on the record. We'll talk more about him specifically later. But he is an interesting case because there's no way to define Mark Cuban as anything other than self-made, right? Like he was born into very modest circumstances. Do you think that makes a difference somehow?
Yeah, I do think that makes a difference. I think I talked to a lot of people, or I talked to the dozen people I talked to. There were no, say in the piece, there's no universal like experience of wealth, and so everybody's experiences are different. But I think that the self-made, uh, uh, you know, person of extreme wealth is definitely it's a different psychology that they're working with than somebody who is an inheritor. And what I heard a lot of times from a lot of people, not necessarily Mark Cuban, but the self-made, they have sort of they have an easier time justifying their wealth. They think that I think at least one of the people I talked to, a lot of them said, I feel like I deserve this. I think that if I had to, if I lost all my money today, tomorrow I could go out and make the same amount of money if I had to because I know how to do it. And one person I spoke with even said that the universe or the world finally felt as though is the way that it should be when he became wealthy. He thought there was always something missing, there was always something wrong, and then becoming wealthy was just basically the world sort of acknowledging the uh, basically who he was, and it finally compensated him accordingly. And so I definitely heard that kind of thing a few times from the self-made. And Mark Cuban, though, I think he acknowledged he was the wealthiest person I spoke to, and he said, "But of course I'm lucky." He said, "Show me the billionaire, and I'll show you the luck that they had," and he more than acknowledged that. But I think yes, in general, I heard different things uh, from inheritors and from the self-made.
The reality that these folks have a different kind of, social psychology to work through is interesting because, like, on the one hand, in this country, money is your ticket to a certain kind of respect. And yet, it also puts people in this position where everyone else feels free to judge them either worthy or unworthy of what they have.
Right. Uh, Yeah, and so it was very interesting that yes, when I did talk to people, it's like they even though I granted them this veil of anonymity, I wasn't going to reveal their names. I give the barest trace of a description of who they were and what they did, and they still were like kind of in some cases struggling to sort of answer my questions because I think that they were I think there's a certain amount of self-consciousness that comes with this. People are judging you. You even the self-made people who feel like they deserve this, they know that they are being thought of a certain way by everyone else. And so I think that there is this sort of layer of discomfort, I think, to uh you know to that kind of existence. Not that anybody feels bad with them. I mean, what's smaller than the world's smallest violin? That's I guess that's what this is. But at the same time, it's real, and so I thought it was worth uh, sort of trying to put a finger on.
Did the people you spoke to who had not always had huge amounts of money tend to note an experience of like before and after?
They definitely did. I think there was maybe some blurring of the lines a little bit in terms of just how fast they were sort of able to sort of acclimate to becoming wealthy. But I think everybody that I talked to who started off with one circumstance and then you know entered another, yes, they all said basically life changed when that money arrived. And so I asked everybody that question, and yeah, got kind of there was a little bit of a variation in answers, but I think everybody said they could feel something about the world change when they got that first blast of lots of money.
So, presumably money is at least one of the goals if you have started a business and you're trying to earn that money. You do note that there are 3 times as many billionaires today as there were in 2010. I don't know if that's in the world or just this country. But you also remind us that the most visible among them are often the most obnoxious. Are you talking? Is Elon Musk the poster child for that, or who are you talking about?
Well, I think if you look at the top 10 wealthiest people in the world right now, the New York Magazine fact checker wanted wanted me to sort of justify that line too, and I said I just sent her the Forbes top 10 billionaires list, and yes, it's Elon Musk, it's Mark Zuckerberg, it's the Google guys, it's Larry Ellison. Uh, uh, yes, it's Jeff Bezos, of course. And so I think that there are tons and tons of super wealthy people in the world. Not all of them evil. Not all of them ostentatiously just sort of sticking everyone else's face in their wealth. There are a lot of perfectly under the radar wealthy people. But I think the people at the very top maybe give this class a bad name a little bit. But yeah.
It's always interesting for me to read something about a very, very wealthy person whose name I'd never heard before, because we do sort of think maybe we do know the people on that Forbes top 10 list. I mean, are there a lot of people with just enormous assets who deliberately try to fly under the radar?
Yeah, I think that there are. Yes, one of the things that Mark Cuban told me, and I don't think this made it into the piece, but he said uh, basically fame is harder for him to deal with than
Mm.
like the psychology of wealth. And he said he's got people with much more money than he has, and he said they're probably happier and more comfortable than he is because they don't have to deal with any of the public scrutiny. Uh, but yeah, there are tons and tons of wealthy people all over the place, and we don't know all of their names. They're everywhere, and we just uh, yeah, I think a lot of them really do just sort of fly under the radar because I think it's like we talked about it. It is, you know, the world sees this, sees the ultra wealthy through a certain lens, and I think a lot of wealthy people would sort of like to not be looked at that way, and so I think there is a tendency to try to shy away from this.
This is a personal question, so you don't have to answer it, but I'm just curious for perspective on this article. Did you happen to grow up with a lot of money?
No, I grew up in Rochester, New York. My father is an optometrist, so it definitely was comfortable, but not, definitely not rich, not wealthy.
So you bring the
Yeah,
same curiosity as the rest of us, most of us listening, I should say.
exactly. Yeah, and it's coming to New York and working at New York Magazine, and where we are kind of obsessed with the rich. It's like, yeah, of course, I'm super curious about it, and so that's how I'm coming to this.
Lane, to your point earlier about writing for New York Magazine, where there's a lot of very wealthy people are featured there. I think all the time about this term that David Brooks coined years ago, status income disequilibrium. So you write for this fancy magazine and people want to be in New York Magazine, but you don't have the kind of money as most of the subjects that you profile. How do you feel this day to day?
Well, I'm not always writing about their ultra wealthy. I'm not the person who is, writing in every case about Jeff Bezos. I cover sort of a broad, sort of range of different things, and so it's not something that weighs on me every day, and it's not something I always have to think about with every story. But I do talk to a lot of people who I think are pretty, sort of pretty well off. Like I said, I was the culture editor of the magazine for a long time, and so, but I don't know. I think you just get used to it. I think the same way that maybe the same way that the ultra wealthy sort of get used to their money pretty quickly. Maybe I just this is sort of the water that I'm kind of swimming in, and so you after a while you don't really think about it. I hadn't really thought about it all that much until I wrote this piece, and then it sort of became a little bit more tangible. And so that, but yeah, usually I'm not quite thinking about this that much.
And a number of your subjects told you they hadn't really thought about how their wealth might have transformed them. They hadn't talked about it, at least. Is that because before you came along, nobody dared to ask them?
It seems it kind of actually does sort of seem that way. It seems like some of the people I spoke with said that they have like they had only sort of spoken about this topic with like their spouse, and maybe that's it. Like it's not something they are yeah, we're used to talking about. And so that I think made it really kind of interesting to me. And also, it was a lot of strange and uh sometimes uncomfortable conversations. It definitely made for a weird some weird phone calls. But yeah, I think that they just for whatever reason, it's like you this is not a thing that they talk about much, and not a thing that they maybe want to think about much.
It sounds as if talking with them about these things was a little bit like therapy, right? Like they were working through their conclusions to your questions as they answered your questions.
Right. And usually people can't wait to get off the phone with me. It's like, usually, when I'll have my interview scheduled for a certain amount of time, and it's like, oh, look at the time, and then they're off the phone, right at the last minute. This uh, this story, I was on the phone with people much longer than we had initially planned to be. In a couple of cases, they called me back the next day, and we went longer. I met somebody in a New York coffee shop, uh, and I think we'd sort of blocked out an hour, and we spent way more than that, uh, talking about this. And so it really was, I think, for however reluctant people were to talk about this in the first place, once they got going, I think a lot of them found that they actually enjoyed it, and hadn't had somebody like actually want to listen to them uh, talk about this. And so that I don't know, I thought that was fascinating.
Social scientists have documented the effects of the scarcity mindset, right? How living for a long time without being able to count on having the resources you need just to get through daily life will affect your behaviors in somewhat predictable ways. You wanted to know if there was, the inverse, like the I don't know, mindset of plenty. Has
Sure.
anyone has anyone actually studied this that you could find?
There's this handful of studies that I uh, I have to say I'm a little skeptical of, because I think there was one study where they gave subjects who weren't even wealthy themselves, but they gave them like more monopoly money than other subjects, and then uh, they somehow found that they became less empathetic, uh, in some kind of test or something like that. But this is not something that ever has really been studied under lab conditions. It's hard to get wealthy people there in a the scientific setting, and have them sort of talk about this and check in with them over time. It's probably not a thing that is even possible to gauge in any kind of like actually scientific way.
So, full and obvious disclosure, this show is produced by a public radio station. My job exists because people choose to be generous. Some of them are just regular middle class people, some of them are very wealthy people who make significant gifts. And we are grateful for everyone who makes that choice. I do wonder, though, if I were just incredibly wealthy and had the money that I could hand out to anybody who came asking, whether I would be annoyed at how often people came asking.
I think that, well, a few of the people I spoke with said that one of the first things they learned was how to deal with situations exactly like the one you just described. Uh, Somebody said that whenever an old friend reaches out, they will sort of Google the friend and see what they're up to, and it's like, oh, look, they just started a business, and they
Mm.
presumably are looking for an investment. So that is something that kind of happens a lot, and I think that they in those cases, I think most of them just said they have a standard thing that they say, which is that I don't make investments like that, but I would love to catch up sometime. Uh, but I think, yeah, you can sort of have an open wallet maybe only for so long before you learn a lesson about how that works.
This was fascinating. Almost to a person, people describe to you the awkwardness if they have friends who are in, much more modest financial brackets still, and they continue to socialize, which I gather doesn't happen all the time. But if they do, and the restaurant check comes, there's this weird dilemma. Talk about that.
Well, so yeah, this I thought was really kind of funny. As I was doing these interviews, I didn't even have to ask this question. Almost everybody, yeah, to a person, brought this up kind of spontaneously, and said that a lot of the things we're talking about are sort of unsaid, sort of ambiently strange, effects of being wealthy, and they're hard to sort of put a finger on and sort of isolate and define. But they said all of these weird feelings become real and tangible uh, when you sit down and for a meal, and then the check comes, and then all of a sudden you have this little miniature negotiation with the people you're eating with about who pays, and there's just no uh, sort of graceful way to handle it sometimes, because if you pay the check, which of course you can do, it's easy enough. Uh, a lot of them said it's like it feels like I'm sending a message to the person I'm dining with, like maybe I think I'm better than you, or I want something from you. But then if you don't reach for the check, that makes you look cheap, or that makes you look like clueless. And so uh, everybody that I spoke to pretty much sort of mentioned that as this strange sort of pain point in their lives. And that's one of the things. Having tons and tons of money, it seems to be one thing that everybody just has to deal with, and it's hard to make go away. So I thought that was fascinating too.
Yeah, it's a fascinating conundrum because on the one hand, if you go out to lunch with Mark Cuban and he's like, "Let's go Dutch on this," that feels weird. But
Right.
I can understand how some people would bristle. So I would imagine the responses from the less wealthy people around the table are different every time. What had people figured out about dealing with this situation, which is going to come up over and over if they still have friends or family members who are not as wealthy?
One person just said, I grab grab the check every time. That's what I do, and everybody else can just deal with it. He's like, that's the only way I feel comfortable in this, and that's that. Another person I spoke with told me that he has worked out a formula where he knows exactly how much money he can spend every day, uh, in a way that would not impact his net worth. And if anything, including a restaurant check, is sort of under that limit, he just pays automatically. And again, it's like everybody else can sort of deal with it. Uh, Another person I spoke with said that he usually will let a friend pay a bill once, uh, or to go Dutch once, and then after that, uh, he'll pay. But I think yeah, that's pretty much it. Basically, all of the people I spoke with said pretty much uh, they'll usually find a way to just put their card down, and that's the least awkward way to handle this problem.
Somebody I was very close to many years ago became just incredibly wealthy. And we have remained friends. And any awkwardness is actually on my part, not their part, which is also interesting. I would imagine very wealthy people have to think about that as well.
Right. You always have to sort of guess what's going on in the heads of, yeah, people who knew you before this and now know you after this. And it's, yeah, friendships sort of change the reality of psychology of, friendship changes. There's always kind of an elephant in the room when this happens. And so it is, again, nobody's feeling sorry for the ultra wealthy, but this is a thing that is, sort of in their brain space all the time.
What I mean, entrepreneurs who come into money or people who make money with their business, that's one set of people. Is it somehow easier for those who have always had access to great wealth, maybe family wealth, to feel comfortable with it?
In the conversations that I had, and again, small sample size, but it almost felt in some ways like the people that were inheritors were maybe a little less comfortable with it, or they had a little bit more uh, to work through. Uh, they, uh, I think that they're used to feeling judged. They're used to being thought of a certain ways. Maybe they just sort of lucked into this thing that they didn't deserve, and I think that that weighs on them. Uh, Again, at least the ones I talked to. I talked to one really uh, smart and introspective guy who was telling me uh, that it's like he envies the self-made. He knows that the drive and the sort of ambition that you have that is sort of required to be a self-made wealthy person is just sort of beyond him, and he is always going to feel maybe a little bit bad that he doesn't have that. Uh, and so yeah, I think that one of the other people I talked to sort of compared it to driving a race car. Basically, uh, if if you're self-made, you have sort of figured out yourself a little bit how to drive the car. Whereas if you're an inheritor and your trust fund vests at a certain point and this money just sort of drops in your lap, you're just sort of instantly dropped into this,
Hmm.
this car going 200 miles an hour, and you really have to figure out uh, how to drive it, sort of while it's already moving. And so I thought that was an interesting metaphor.
Yeah, it's interesting, Lane, if you come into family money or you were raised with family money and you've always had it's sort of your job just to not be the generation that burns through it all. But people may or may not have the skills to do that. Whereas, like entrepreneurs, you found a number of them were like, yeah, if I lose it all tomorrow, I'll start over and make another billion.
Right. Uh, well, yeah, and so uh, I think there is, yeah, sort of this additional worry of that inheritors sort of face. It's like, yeah, I don't want to lose this. I feel this extra obligation to make sure I'm not the generation that sort of blows this for the entire family. And so I think that's that it may be, again, nobody's feeling sorry for them, but that is a real and tangible fear that they are definitely dealing with.
It's a little bit of a trope when you read a memoir by someone who has grown up in poverty that often they will say, I didn't realize we were poor until this happened or that happened, or I
Mhm.
got to college or I moved or whatever. Is it also possible for people who have always been surrounded by wealthy peers to not realize they are very wealthy until a certain age?
That is a good question. I think that there probably is an awareness uh, of the wealth, but I think it's humans are just sort of wired to adapt really quickly to their circumstances, and so I feel like they probably get used to it and maybe don't quite always understand the strangeness or the difference about their circumstances. But uh, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I'm sure it's definitely possible.
It's been a long time since I've had to worry that I couldn't pay like a basic bill required for my life. But, like a lot of people, I guess I have a kind of a low frequency financial anxiety around having enough for retirement or coping if there were some life changing health crisis. I would imagine that having millions or billions of dollars guarantees a life free of that worry. But you learned there is a pecking order even among the very wealthy.
Uh, well, it is interesting to maybe go back to the first thing you just said. It's like the thing that keeps normal people like you and I in line is we we're sort of locked into that framework of you want something, you strive and you save, and then you can get it. And that gives you a lot. That gives you a sort of a structure to life. That gives you in some ways it gives you a purpose. And so when you remove that for people, I think that's it's fascinating. It's like what do you do with yourself when that happens? And so some people are better equipped to handle it than others, and you can almost never know until you sort of remove that. But yes, there is a pecking order. I spoke with a luxury travel agent who I thought this is really fascinating. She said she works with a lot of clients who basically when they go on these vacation like sort of luxury vacations, they want everyone to see how much money they're spending and how well off they are, and they sort of get some I don't know, some satisfaction about in showing off their wealth. Uh, and so there is a pecking order, and people who maybe are not as well off, they maybe only have a mere $50 million or something. Uh, this is a place where they can feel a little bit inadequate because there's always going to be somebody richer in one of these places kind of showing it off a little more.
It never ends.
It never ends. Yeah, exactly. It's you think everybody thinks that they have a number in their brain where it's like this is all I would need to be happy. But the more people I spoke with, I kind of learned it's like that number moves, and it's maybe just always a little bit out of reach no matter what you do.
Lane, you mentioned, most regular people have this number in our heads, maybe tied to what the lottery prize is this week or whatever, of how much money we would need to be happy and secure. To return to Mark Cuban, his sense is that if you were happy before you get rich, you'll be happy after, and vice versa. This is not what most people imagine when we wish for great wealth, is it?
It's not. I think that if you're I think a lot of people imagine money would make me much happier, and that is definitely easy to believe. But when you talk to the people who have actually been through this experience, I think a lot of them will tell you that's not exactly how it is. And so, Mark Cuban described it as he said, basically, it's an amplifier effect. If you're happy as a poor person, you are going to be really happy as a wealthy person, and if you're miserable, you that's not going to change when you have a lot of money.
So I guess he thinks of himself as quite happy now.
He said he was happy, kind of happy always, and I think even happier now.
He told you that he felt like the money has freed him up to pursue his ideas on a grand scale. How has he done that?
Let's say he told me, he went to a Dallas Mavericks game, and just the it was like the building was half empty. The team sucked, and he said, I could do better than these owners. And a lot of people go to a basketball game and say stuff like that, but not all of us can buy the team and sort of reimagine what that team is. And so I think that's he sort of described his own sort of experience with money as I've always thought the same way, and now this money, yeah, gives me the opportunity to think about this, but basically play on a larger chessboard. So he did that with the Dallas Mavericks. He has done this with his more recent company, Cost Plus Drugs, which is sort of basically he I think reduces like the middleman fees and sells prescription drugs for cheaper. He just always sort of wondered about healthcare. It's like there has to be a better way, and he actually found one. And so again, most of us think about these problems and can't actually do anything about them. But when you have $5.7 billion, it turns out maybe sometimes you can do things. And so I thought that was interesting, and he uh, yeah, fascinating character.
What did you learn about how inheritors' use of their money, stewardship of their money, varies by gender generally?
Uh, well, so I spoke with somebody who is a tax expert who had dealt with a lot of wealthy people and spoken to men and women both who were dealing with inherited wealth. And he said in his experience, he has found that women are more protective of the money. They want to be conservative in their investments, whereas male inheritors want to feel like they've you know gambled and made back even more money with that. They are envious of the self-made, and so they will be riskier in their investments to feel like they have actually earned more of a right to their money. And I thought that was fascinating.
One thing that seems pretty universal among very wealthy people is a kind of isolation. This comes about in a couple of different ways. You write about one person who had a startup while he was still a university student, made a huge amount of money even then. It seems like something anybody would celebrate, but he felt like he had to keep quiet about it.
Right. So he was in his dorm, just sitting there in front of his laptop, and his startup was just instant success, and his net worth exploded by hundreds of thousands of dollars. He went from almost nothing to hundreds of thousands of dollars, almost $1 million, just all in the space of about 1 minute. And yeah, if that happened to me, I think I would go screaming down the street. But apparently, that's not actually the way that it works. He said that he went out to dinner with his dorm mates that night and just couldn't tell them because he thought, these guys will think that I'm a jerk if I bring this up. And he also said he couldn't even tell his parents because he had just made more money than they did, in a whole year in again the space of about a minute. And so he thought, how do I even tell my mother and father about this? And so it one of the things that I encountered over and over again was these wealthy people felt that they could not talk about this. Even amongst themselves sometimes. It's a tricky subject, and so there is this feeling that wealth kind of insulates you from a lot of things that the rest of us deal with, but it also isolates you from other people just almost by default. There's almost no way around it, and that just came up over and over again. It was almost a universal feeling.
It insulates and isolates also in a really literal sense, like you might live farther away from your neighbors and never have to go through airport security. What sort of effect does that have on people?
I did ask everybody, do you think that being wealthy and never having to go through airport security and never having to deal with the daily frictions of life that the rest of us work with, do you think that makes you? How do you think that makes you different? And I think a lot of them started to say, it's. I don't think it's changed me. I still, understand and appreciate, my wealth and my circumstances and my ability to sort of, work outside of that. But the more they talked, I think a lot of them really did sort of realize, oh, wait a second, this can't help but have an effect. Uh, it's probably exactly what you imagine. It's just again, it just isolates you. It makes it probably harder to identify with people that you don't who don't have that kind of money because you just aren't interacting with them as often.
So you want to make sure, as a very wealthy person, that your access to capital isn't making you a terrible person. And it sounds like you didn't find too much of that. But the other thing, and not too much of this came up in the piece. I'm curious whether people talk very much about their thinking about their children, and especially the ones who made their own money, maybe had that experience of striving, and then became very wealthy. But their kids are born into very different circumstances.
Sure. That was something I heard a little bit about. I think it was everybody kind of struggles with the question of, okay, how much and how soon am I able to sort of pass down this money? It's like, when should the trust fund vest? When is when is the appropriate age when they can just sort of be hit with with all this money in a way that just won't completely corrupt them? And nobody really had a good answer. They all kind of worried about this. Even the people who thought, I'm an inheritor. I have sort of made it through this okay myself. Even then, they worried about their children and whether the money would spoil their children. And so, this is just a real anxiety that I think a lot of them felt. And one of the people I talked to was sort of funny. He said that he doesn't really spend all that much money. He's pretty thrifty, but now that he's getting older, he wants to spend more of the money faster so his kids don't get all of it because he's worried about what that would do to them. So I thought that was sort of funny. But yes, no, I think this is a real fear.
Some people did describe to you the fact that splurging on luxury items that everybody, including a billionaire, can, agree they don't absolutely need, becomes less fun and thrilling when you can do it every day.
Yes, I spoke with one person who said he used to buy, before he could actually afford them, he used to buy $500 sneakers every once in a while. And he would sort of get this, jolt of excitement every time he did that. And then once he became wealthy, he did it and he found that it wasn't as fun anymore. And what he thinks that he learned from that is that it wasn't the shoes that were giving him that excitement. It was the irresponsibility of the purchase. Uh, and so I thought that was really interesting. It's like the risk and uh, the irresponsibility and the fact that you can't afford it was kind of the thing that made you excited to do it. And so yeah, I think a lot of the people I spoke with said they've sort of achieved this equilibrium now where they have like spent a lot of money, they have tried a lot of things, and they have come to this place where they have designed their life and in a way that everything is exactly how they like it. And even if they had more money, it wouldn't necessarily sort of change all that much about their day to day because they have sort of now calibrated everything to exactly their sort of their wants. And so I thought that was really interesting too.
We love a movie or a TV show about very wealthy people. I mean, Succession was really popular, White Lotus is really popular. Those shows, though, also mostly give us rich people who are evil or out of touch or undeserving. Is there something about great wealth that might breed a sense of entitlement or of being a more worthy human than someone who earns less or has less?
Well, it is fascinating. Everybody on TV is right now at the moment super wealthy, and these TV shows really only seem to portray the ultra wealthy, one of two ways. They're either evil or dumb. Uh, and uh, the people I spoke with understood, and they sort of acknowledged that that is a real thing that can happen. They have seen plenty of bad behavior among other wealthy people. One guy I talked to said, just every time I go to, you know, one of the few places that wealthy people go on vacation, I just see the most appalling behavior, worse than I've seen anywhere, and I feel bad for these people's children because their parents are just acting so obnoxiously in public. Uh, and so I think that there is the people I spoke with anyway. Yeah, they understood that this is a real possibility, a real thing that you can slide into, and I think that they are sort of hyper aware of that and sort of trying really hard not to let that happen to themselves. And one of the ways that they mentioned that they like to kind of prevent that is just basically by being thrifty. They think it's like this mental guardrail sometimes where it's like I can say to myself that money hasn't changed me if I am still cheap. Uh, and so yeah, so a lot of them said, if I can still hold on to that, then I can feel like I'm not sliding into like Jeffrey Epstein territory.
I get that you would need that. On the other hand, when very wealthy people are like, "Oh, I know, I've seen other wealthy people behaving badly," it makes me think about
Right.
how, like, every white person has a story of another white person being super racist, which is like a way of saying I couldn't possibly be because I can identify this behavior in someone else.
Right, right, and it's the yes, I'm being very generous to the people that I spoke with. I don't, I only spoke with them the most for a couple hours, and so their idea of obnoxious may be different from mine, and for all I know, they're not acting all that well on vacation either. But I don't think so. They all seem fairly reasonable to me. But yes, yeah, exactly. You never know. I think it's I have a very small window into this just based on these conversations. So it's hard to say. Maybe White Lotus and Succession are perfectly accurate depictions of this world, and yeah, I don't know.
It does seem like a paradox that most of us love to, if not resent, at least judge super wealthy people. And yet we cannot help wishing we were right there among them and feeling like we would do a great job at being rich people. Were you able to make sense throughout this reporting project of that contradiction?
Definitely, I think I mean, it's tricky. It's a tension that's sort of always going to be there. It's like, yeah, I'm talking to these people, and I'm trying to put myself in the headspace of somebody who's totally objective, and I'm hearing about their experience, and then I'm also kind of thinking, it's like, well, boy, I would be fantastic at being wealthy. I'm great at managing money. I know exactly what I would do, and so yeah, so I think it's however much. Somebody might want to sort of try to step outside that. I think it's just a real dynamic that is kind of unavoidable. Of course, I'd love to be super wealthy, but having gone through this reporting process, I also understand that it may not be exactly what I'm, sort of wishing for and expecting. Uh, and yeah, so but that's a kind of a sign of an interesting story that is worth telling.
Lane Brown is a features writer at New York Magazine, where you can find his article, What Does Extreme Wealth Do to the Brain? Lane, thanks so much for the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Think is distributed by PRX, the Public Radio Exchange. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere you get podcasts, or at think.kera.org, which is where you can find out about upcoming shows as well. Again, I'm Chris Boyd. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.
From PRX.